Okay, sir.
Okay, ma'am.
Good morning to all. On behalf of the OBG department of Annapurna Medical College and Hospital, I welcome everyone to this webinar on postpartum hemorrhage. We'll first start off with a prayer song. At the outset, I would like to thank our beloved chairman, J.S. Satish Kumar, for encouraging us and providing us the infrastructure and the other facilities for this program. I request our Dean, Professor Dr. P. Shanmugam, to address the gathering. I request our HOD of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Professor Dr. N. Sarvana Kumar, to invite the speaker, Dr. E. Sukanya.
Good morning, everyone. At the outset, I would like to invite Dr. Sukanya, who is close associate of me for a long time.
As our dean has just arrived, I request our dean, Professor Dr. P. Shanmugam, to address the gathering.
Good morning to everyone. I'm very happy the Department of OG has arranged a webinar on PPH and hemorrhage. So I welcome the guest speaker. Thank you, madam, for accepting our invitation and coming over here and speak about the PPH. Okay. It will be useful to the participants, and I wish you all the best. I congratulate the department for organizing the webinar. This reverse, thank you all.
Next, I would like to invite our medical superintendent, Professor Dr. N. Mohan, to say a few words.
Good morning to all. It's a very common topic, but still it needs so many discussions, and it needs the newer advancement. Dr. Sukanya madam, thank you very much for participating, accepting and participating this program. I thank the HOD, OG and Magali madam and all their team for organizing this wonderful webinar. I wish all success, and it will be an academic and as well as practicing physicians. They will be benefited. Thank you. Now we can proceed. Thank you very much.
So actually, PPH is one condition which humbles even the experience of an obstetrician. So at times we have control over the uterus, at times we don't have control over the uterus. So I have come here as a learner. Even though I may have so much of experiences, we are still learners when we compare to how the uterus acts weirdly. And Dr. Sukanya is a close associate of me for many years. She has worked in various capacities in Government Medical College in Salem as well as in Dharmapuri. So they have seen on a day-to-day basis, even Magali madam would have seen on a day-to-day basis, so many cases being referred, de novo cases which happen there. And then sometimes we even line up all our students to donate blood to save the patient. So this happens on an everyday basis in places where there is a lot of patients who are delivering as well as referred patients. So over to you, madam. We are here to listen to whatever your experience and the expertise speaks. Thank you.
Before we start, I would like to ask the Associate Professor, Dr. R. Sujata, to introduce the guest speaker.
Good morning to all of you. It is my pleasant duty to be introducing Dr. E. Sukanya, Associate Professor of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Government Dharmapuri Medical College and Hospital. She has done her MBBS undergraduation at Madurai Medical College, MD-OG at Stanley Medical College. Her special interests are in high-risk obstetrics and vaginal surgeries, and she's trained in colposcopy and tubal microsurgery. Her teaching experience is of more than 15 years. Over to you, madam.
Thank you, madam, for your kind introduction. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. Today, I am going to give an overview of the postpartum hemorrhage.
You continue.
And like share the screen. Open the watch. My face. Yeah. Please excuse me, there's some problem in uploading my file. I'll rectify it correct. Okay. Other side of the Yes, sir, that's it, no? So good morning, everybody. Sorry for the delay. There was some technical problem. So today I'm going to talk about the postpartum hemorrhage. So postpartum hemorrhage is nothing but excessive or undue bleeding after childbirth.
Madam, we are not able to
It
see
is
the
an important cause for maternal.
Madam, we are not able to see the slides.
Not able to see the slides. Sorry.
Share பண்ணுங்க, madam. You can share your screen.
Yeah. Now, are you able to see the screen, sir?
No, no, no.
Hello, I've started sharing the screen.
No, we are not able to see the screen. Slides.
Sorry. So, shall I log out and come in again?
Yes, madam.
Thank you.
Video start. Okay. This. You unmute it. Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, madam, you are audible.
Okay, my share is screened.
Yeah, you are able to see yes, screen share.
My screen is shared, so.
Full screen acting, madam. You can
So I'm going to talk about the PPH today. So postpartum, sorry?
you can make it full screen.
Okay.
Slideshow going to start from start coding, ma'am. Slideshow start from first one. Come as a full screen.
Now is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So postpartum hemorrhage is nothing but undue hemorrhage after childbirth. It is the most important cause maternal death, accounting for almost 1/4 of maternal deaths worldwide. And it is a leading cause of maternal death in low-income countries. In India, it accounts for around 35 to 58% of maternal deaths in our country. Now, PPH is defined as the blood loss of more than 500 ml following childbirth, and it is called as a major PPH if there is more than 1000 ml of blood loss. PPH can be primary or secondary. Primary PPH is defined as blood loss of more than 500 ml within the first 24 hours after delivery or 1000 ml after cesarean delivery, and it is most common within the first hour after the childbirth. Secondary PPH is defined as blood loss of more than 500 ml or more from the genital tract that occurs more than 24 hours after delivery and up to 6 weeks postpartum. The etiology of PPH can be termed as 4 T's, that is tone, trauma, tissue, and thrombin. The first T stands for the tone, that is the uterine atony, which is the most common cause of PPH. Trauma stands for the laceration of the genital tract anywhere from the perineum to the uterus. And tissue stands for retained placenta, retained placental bits, inversion of uterus, or abnormal placentation. Thrombin stands for coagulopathy. Now, how to diagnose PPH? PPH is diagnosed by various methods. The most common and practically used method is visual blood loss estimation, where by looking at the amount of the blood loss, the average estimation is done. This is aided by pictorial diagrams also. During cesarean section, the blood loss is measured by using suction canisters, and blood loss is also measured by using blood collection grapes, where underbuttock grapes, calibrated grapes are used, where the blood loss from the genital tract is allowed to collect in a grape which is calibrated. The other methods like spectrophotometry, cyan-hemoglobin, and granulometric methods are not used practically. So this is a visual blood loss estimation, and this is a pictorial guide which helps in the estimation of the blood loss. For example, if a standard size gauze is fully soaked, then the blood loss estimated is around 30 ml. If the blood collected fills halfway of an average size, medium-sized kidney tray, it may be equivalent to 150 cc. And if it fills wholly the medium-sized kidney tray, the blood loss is equivalent to 350 around 350 ml. Suppose if the blood spills, soaks the pad worn by the patient fully, and then it spills over the bed, and there is a pool of blood on the bed, then the estimated blood loss may be around 1000 ml. If the blood spills from the bed and onto the floor, then the blood loss may be severe and it may be around 2000 ml.
Now, what are the clinical features of the blood loss? Clinical features depend upon the amount of blood loss, the percentage of the total blood volume. So up to 750 ml of blood loss of an average sized woman, there may be no changes in the clinical features. The tachycardia pulse rate starts to rise only when the blood loss is more than 750 to 1500 ml or more than 15% of the blood is lost. The blood pressure decreases only when the blood loss is more than 1500 to 2000 ml. That is more than 30 to 40% of the blood loss. And features of the hemorrhagic shock, that is tachycardia, tachypnea, hypotension, and anuria, decreased urine output, will occur only when the blood loss is more than 30 to 40%. So usually the blood loss is estimated along with the clinical features. So we tend to underestimate the blood loss when we try to when we try to diagnose PPH on the basis of clinical features. Now, what are the complications of PPH? Complications may be postpartum anemia, postpartum depression, lactation failure, anterior pituitary necrosis, coagulopathy, hemorrhagic shock leading to multi-organ failure and death, and complications of treatment like blood transfusion reaction, loss of fertility due to obstetric hysterectomy. Now, coming to the management, management includes general management, that is resuscitation of the patient, and the treatment of the cause. Both should occur simultaneously. So initially the vitals are examined and the uterus is examined per abdomen to rule out atonicity, and examination of the vagina and cervix is done to rule out trauma, and exploration of the uterine cavity is done to rule out, and the bladder is catheterized. Then two large bore IV cannula, 18 size gray color cannula is inserted so that fluid resuscitation is facilitated. And while inserting the cannula, blood is collected for cross-matching and other investigations. And initial fluid bolus is given up to 1 to 1.5 liters. Then NASD garment is applied, this non-pneumatic anti-shock garment. And with this, assessment of vitals is done every 10 to 15 minutes. And if the vitals are not improving, then we have to transfuse blood. So this is a picture of non-pneumatic anti-shock garment used in hemorrhagic shock. So the principle is that it redirects the blow from non-essential organs to the essential vital organs. Now coming to the fluid resuscitation, what fluid we have to use for fluid resuscitation? The recommended fluid is only crystalloids, not the colloids, and either ringer lactate or normal saline can be used. Within the first half an hour, fluid should be rushed. So within 10 to 15 minutes, 1 pint of fluid has to be rushed. And the third pint can be given in the next half an hour. Meanwhile, blood has to be arranged and blood transfusion can be done. If the clinical symptoms are not improving, then we have to activate the massive transfusion protocol. This is defined as replacement of more than 50% of the total blood volume by the blood products within 3 hours, or transfusion of more than 4 RBCs, packed RBCs within 1 hour, with anticipation of continued need for blood product support. So this is given, packed RBCs, FFP and platelets are given in the ratio of 1:1:1. Now coming to the management of the etiology, coming to the uterine atonicity, this is the most common cause of PPH, accounting for 70% of the PPH. So we all know that the uterine musculature is arranged in crisscross pattern where the blood vessels pass through them. When the muscles contract, the blood vessels are constricted and the blood loss is reduced after childbirth. So in uterine atonicity, the musculature doesn't contract, and so the blood vessels are not constricted and there is excessive blood loss. What are the risk factors for uterine atonicity? This anemia, prolonged labor, multiparity, multiple pregnancy, obstructed labor, polyhydramnios, precipitate labor, general anesthesia, and fibroids. But we should know that more than 2/3 of the patients who have PPH have no risk factors. What are the clinical features of uterine atonicity? So when we palpate the uterus per abdomen, the uterus will be felt flat. Usually after childbirth, when the uterus is well contracted, it should have a cricket ball consistency or a stone-like consistency. And If we check for the bleeding usually comes from the os, and it is associated with intermittent bouts of bleeding whenever the uterus relaxes. So PPH atonicity of bleeding due to atonicity can occur as gush of blood immediately after delivery of the placenta, or it can occur as a slow trickle as well as intermittent bouts when associated with the relaxation of the uterus. Now coming to the management of atonic PPH can be by medical methods, mechanical methods, surgical methods, or radiological interventions can be given. For medical management, we give various drugs are there. The first line drug used is the oxytocin, where 10 to 40 international units is mixed in 1 liter of fluid, that is 20 units and half liter of saline or RL. It is given as an infusion at a rate of 40 to 60 drops per minute. There are no contraindications, and the side effects are hypotension, nausea, vomiting, and water retention. Methyl ergonovin is given in the dose of 0.2 milligram every 2 hours, and contraindications is hypertension, coronary disease, and Raynaud's disease. This side effects are nausea, vomiting, and hypertension. Corboprost, 15-methyl prostaglandin F2 alpha, that is given in the dose of 250 micrograms. It can be given every 15 to 90 minutes. The maximum of 8 doses can be given. It can also be given intramyometrically during cesarean section. The contraindications are reactive, that is bronchial asthma, pulmonary hypertension. Side effects are bronchoconstriction, shivering, diarrhea, and fever. Misoprostol is a prostaglandin E1 analog. It can be given in the doses of 800 to 1000 micrograms, either per rectum or buccal. Contraindications are none, and side effects are nausea, vomiting, shivering, diarrhea, and fever. The other drugs used are carbetocin and tranexamic acid. Carbetocin is an oxytocin analog. The advantage is that it is heat stable and long acting. The dose is 100 micrograms IM or IV. Tranexamic acid is also given as 1 gram IV. Maximum dose is 2 grams per day. Now coming to the mechanical methods. So as soon as the atonic PPH is diagnosed, the one who is standing nearby has to give the bimanual uterine compression immediately. So the technique is one should make a fist of one hand and insert it into the vagina, and compress, and compression is given through the anterior fornix. And the next hand is placed over the abdomen and over the posterior surface of the uterus by folding the uterus anteriorly over the vaginal hand, and the posterior part of the uterus is massaged. The uterus is hence compressed between the two hands, and massage is given from both anterior and posterior surfaces of the uterus. Then balloon tamponade can also be used. This balloon tamponade is given by various types of devices, like a simple condom can also be used to give the tamponade, or a Foley's catheter, or a Sengstaken Blackmore tube, or a Battery balloon, or Elavis system. So here the catheter is introduced into the uterus, and the balloon is inflated to 500 to 1000 ml of saline using the saline, and it is retained up to 6 to 12 hours, and slowly it is deflated when the uterus regains its tone. Now coming to the surgical methods, when these medical or the mechanical methods fail, we go to surgical methods. Here the conservative surgical methods would be the uterine compression sutures and stepwise devascularization. The uterine compression sutures, there are various techniques by various names. The commonly used one is the B-Lynch, Hayman's, and Cho's sutures. Here in stepwise devascularization, if the medical methods and the conservative methods fail, we go for the stepwise devascularization. That is, the bilateral utero-ovarian artery ligation is followed by internal iliac artery ligation. And hysterectomy is done if all these measures fail. Usually, subtotal hysterectomy is done. So this picture shows the B-Lynch or the brace sutures, where a 2-chromic catgut is used, usually during cesarean section. It is used and the stitch is taken in the uterus so that The compression, mechanical compression is given from above downwards. In stepwise devascularization, first initially one uterine artery is ligated, then the other side uterine artery is ligated, then uterine ovarian artery is ligated on one side, and then the other side ovarian artery ligation is done, followed by the internal iliac artery ligation. So all the surgical procedures have to be done very fast. If facilities are available, radiological investigation, radiological intervention like uterine artery embolization can be done. This is also very much effective. Here, the femoral the catheter is introduced via the femoral artery, and the uterine artery is raised, and particles of polyvinyl PVC particles are introduced into the uterine artery vessels, and so that it is blocked and the blood loss is reduced. In summary, the management of the atonic postpartum hemorrhage can be given in the mnemonic hemostasis. H stands for help. That is, you have to ask for help. One cannot manage alone. And A stands for assessing the vital parameters and the blood loss and resuscitation. E stands for etiology, just establishing the etiology and ensuring the availability of blood and blood products. Then M stands for massaging of the uterus. O stands for oxytocin infusion. S stands for shifting to operation theater to either to explore the vagina or for therapeutic curettage of the retained products. Then T stands for tamponade to exclude retained. T stands for tamponade. A stands for compression, applying compression sutures. S stands for systematic pelvic devascularization. I stands for interventional radiologist usage of interventional radiology techniques like uterine artery embolization, and S stands for subtotal hysterectomy. Now coming to the traumatic PPH, it's the second most cause of postpartum hemorrhage, where it accounts for 5 to 10% of the cases. The laceration of the tissues can occur either in the perineum, vagina, paraurethral area, or the cervical tears. And if the uterus is involved, it can be due to rupture of the uterus. And during cesarean section, the incision can be extended and involving the uterine vessels to cause traumatic PPH. What are the risk factors for traumatic PPH? It is operative vaginal delivery, macrosomia, then malposition, obstructed labor, precipitate labor. Now, how to diagnose traumatic PPH? It is done by exploring the genital tract using a speculum under good lighting, and cervical tear usually is diagnosed by the technique of walking around the cervix. Here you need to have at least 4 sponge-holding forceps. Now the treatment is, as soon as the trauma to the genital tract is diagnosed, before shifting to the operation theatre and repairing the torn tissues, we have to pack the vagina with a gauze pad. This will control the blood loss, and then we can shift to the OT and repair the tissues under anesthesia. For uterine rupture, if the rent is repairable, it can be done, or if it is irreparable, it is extensive, then hysterectomy can be done. Retained placenta is diagnosed when the placenta is not delivered 30 minutes, even after 30 minutes after delivery of the baby. Once diagnosed, a bladder is catheterized and syntocinon drip is administered in the dose of 10 units in 500 ml and wait for at least 15 to 20 minutes. Even if it is not delivered after that, then we have to shift the patient to OT for manual removal of the placenta with the blood products. Retained placenta can be due to a trapped placenta, where the placenta is separated from the uterus, but it is retained within the uterine cavity because of the closure of the os. Or it can be due to adherent placenta. It can be a placenta accreta, placenta increta, or placenta percreta. If it is due to placenta accreta, manual removal of placenta is possible. But if it is due to adherent, severe adherence like increta or percreta, we have to do a laparotomy and go for a hysterectomy with adequate blood and blood products for transfusion. Now coming to the retained placental bits, this is usually due to a retained left out succinturate lobe. or usually this is so this is we have to check for the completeness of the placenta regularly, routinely after the childbirth, after the delivery of the placenta. So if it is not, then sometimes the bits of placenta may be retained in utero. So this is diagnosed by using the ultrasound, where the retained bits can be diagnosed. So once diagnosed, we have to do a curettage or a suction evacuation to remove the bits in the operation theatre under anesthesia. Now coming to the inversion of the uterus. Inversion of uterus after delivery is usually due to faulty placental delivery. When the uterus, usually the placental delivery is done when the uterus is contracting. If it is not done, when the placental cord is pulled when the uterus is in a relaxed state, and if the placenta is in the fundal position, then uterine inversion can occur. So once diagnosed, this has to be immediately replaced manually under general anesthesia, followed by administration of the uterotonics to retain the uterine tonicity. Now coming to the coagulopathy, this is the least common cause for PPH. The causes may be due to placental abruption, disseminated intravascular coagulation, any inherited bleeding disorders, or usage of anticoagulants. The investigations to diagnose coagulopathy may be the platelets, the bedside bleeding time, clotting time, or clot retraction test, prothrombin time, APTT, levels of D-dimer, serum fibrinogen, and fibrin degradation products. Now, how do we manage coagulopathy? We have to replace the coagulation factors. If there is an ongoing blood loss, we have to replace the blood with the factor red blood cells. Then at least 10 units of cryoprecipitate or fresh frozen plasma has to be replaced, and platelets has to be replaced according to the thrombocytopenia, level of thrombocytopenia. So 1 unit of platelet will raise a platelet count to around 3,000 to 5,000. So the aim is to maintain the fibrinogen level of up to 150 to 200 milligrams. And bleeding time and bedside bleeding time and clotting time has to be monitored every hour to 2 hours until the coagulation is corrected. Coagulopathy is corrected. Now coming to the secondary PPH. So this is defined as PPH excessive blood loss after 24 hours after delivery up to 6 weeks. So it can be due to retained placental bits, endometritis, LSC's wound breakdown, subinvolution of the uterus, AV malformation, trophoblastic disease, or malignancy. Now, how do we manage secondary PPH? So it's done by clinical examination, has to be done, where vitals, looking for pallor, then checking the temperature, for fever, then abdominal tenderness, which indicates infection, and involution of the uterus and the lochia. The investigations to be done are complete blood count, which indicates infection and anemia, severity of anemia, then beta HCG to rule out trophoblastic disease, coagulation profile, high vaginal swab to rule out infection, ultrasound and Doppler examination to rule out any AV malformation. The management would be to transfuse blood, then antibiotics to combat the infection, curettage or suction evacuation for retained products, tamponade in case of AV malformation or excessive bleeding, then laparotomy in case of retained placental bits or AV malformation, and arterial embolization can be done for AV malformation. Now, is there any way to prevent PPH? Prevention can be started from the antenatal period by correcting anemia, and during intrapartum period, the labor progress has to be monitored with Bartograph, and inappropriate application of forceps and ventouse must be avoided. Prolonged trial of labor must be avoided, and timely cesarean section should be preferred, and active management of third stage of labor should be done, which we will discuss in the next slide. And intensive fourth stage monitoring should be done along with the uterine massage to diagnose the PPH at an early stage. Coming to the active management of third stage of labor, It has three components, main components. One is the administration of nutrotonics, preferably oxytocin, 10 units IM within 1 minute after delivery of the baby, even during the cesarean section. And second component is the delayed cord clamping, which is done within 1 to 3 minutes after delivery. Controlled contraction with countertraction, this of the placental delivery. This is done only if the skilled birth attendant is available. The others optional is the fundal massage and regular and frequent assessment of the uterine tone by palpation of the uterine fundus after delivery of the placenta. So we are going to conclude. So active management of third stage of labor, early diagnosis of the PPH within the golden hour, within which the initiation of treatment will result in good prognosis. This can reduce the morbidity and mortality due to PPH. Thank you. Thank you for patient listening, and extremely sorry for the delay in the starting the PPH. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your informative talk. Any questions from the listeners? Saravanan sir, your opinion. Meghala ma'am, your opinion.
Thank you, madam, for that extensive coverage of the topic. Rightly said that many times we tend to underestimate the blood loss. That is the main problem, because the patient can go in for, because 30 to 40% blood loss only is going to push the patient into shock. And then from there to going for 50% blood loss, we give massive blood transfusion just to 10%, where sometimes the patient can go for an irreversible shock. So that is the good take-home message that I have got from that talk. Thank you.
We should allow the patient for irreversible shock. Early diagnosis and correction, that is a main thing. And the usage of nifedipine nowadays it is more common now. That will also precipitate PPH.
Nifedipine with the magnesium sulfate sometimes can cause a complete relaxation of the uterus. So that can, so as much as possible, try to avoid both together.
It's a newer thing.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much again. I'm very much sure that our students will learn a lot about postpartum hemorrhage. I would like to conclude the program by thanking our chairman, J.S. Satish Kumar, our dean, VP ma'am, our MS sir, HOD. I would also like to thank Panchancharam for providing technical support. Thank you one and all for making this webinar a success. Thank you.
Thanks, Suganya.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you.